Hey there! In today's video, we are going to be talking about two resources that you might want to use for your next grant narrative if you're looking for any sort of economic policy data or environmental justice data. So with that, let's hit it. Hey there, so I'm going to get started with the cluster mapping data because I actually just learned about this. So we're wrapping up a grant with the US Economic Development Administration. And so it looks like they have been behind creating this really cool tool that tells you about clusters in the US economy. So I wanted to show you just a quick rundown of how you can use this. So I'm going to go ahead and use Spokane as an example. I went to college there, so it's an easy one to come up with. We'll do the economic area. All right, so first of all, across the top, you have the summary, these performance drivers, cluster portfolio, subregions, and organizations, which doesn't always have stuff in it. But let's start with the summary. So here we are, it's zooming us into the Spokane, Washington economic area, which is basically drawing, it's pointing out that the Spokane hub actually draws from North Idaho all the way up to the Canadian border. So here is just helpful information because we can see the performance of Spokane's economic area in comparison to the other 179 in the US. So for instance, the unemployment, they're ranked 88th, right? In the prosperity, it's been increasing continuously from 2001 to 2018. And having graduated and seeing things blow up there in a really positive way, I can definitely affirm that that's happening. But it's cool because this can just give you, it depends on how you want to look at it. If you're looking for some grim data, like this is the one you'd want to talk about, right? So it just gives you, it depends on what kind of information you're looking for, you're going to tie into your narrative. Another thing to talk about is having a look at this cluster portfolio. So these are really interesting because you can see what is driving the economy primarily. So obviously education is a huge deal in Spokane. So I'm going to go ahead. It says there's 5,000 people employed in this cluster. And then you go to the specific dashboard, and this is real cool. Scroll down to it. Okay, so for one, it'll actually show us what jobs are being created in this space. It doesn't really fit on my screen very well. But you can see that primarily the jobs are being created by the colleges and universities, educational support services, etc., and a decline in training programs. But what can be neat is you'll see the relationship of how having a large education economic cluster, like what other sectors that connects to, which are strong or weak in this area. So it just depends on what kind of project you're working on. Like if you're doing some sort of economic development project, obviously you would want to be drawing a correlation between these economic clusters that already exist or that are maybe medium, but you're trying to get them really strong. So it's just useful. It's very interesting. Okay, let's back on out. So we'll go back to our summary. Okay, so I'm back at the summary, and this is really interesting because here you can click these economic indicators, and there's a ton in here, right? So employment, job creation, establishments, patent count, right? That would be an indicator of how much innovation is happening there. So let's go ahead and click job creation, and you can see, wow, like the Kennewick area has lost 5,000 jobs. So they're hurting. We're more neutral, it appears, right? And then this is the Wenatchee economic area. So whatever, you can look around and tell a story from the data that you're going to find. Obviously, it just depends on what you're writing about. But let's have a look at patent count. Well, that doesn't give us anything wildly interesting. Looks like Portland's performing the best in that arena. But anyway, this is just it's always worth having a look and seeing what you can find here and if it's going to support your narrative. Now let's go into subregions. Now that I've clicked on subregions and it's zoomed in, I'm going to roll down here to the comparative wage performance. So again, you're seeing if this helps or strengthens or weakens your argument, but it's going to draw the XY axis based on the US growth rate average and the US annual wage. So you can see how your community, where it fits in. So for here, for example, we can see the annual wage falls quite a bit below the US average, which is 52,000, and in Spokane it's 41. So if you're trying to make the argument you're creating, higher paid jobs, then this would be a good place to make that case, because you can say you're going to try to drive that average up. And it also shows you sort of where the different regions fall that are included in your economic cluster. So we could spend a lot of time digging in on this, but I think that gives you a pretty good idea of just this very cool tool. I'm quite impressed by how easy it is to use. And the big point is just go in here, mess around, just tinker until you find something that helps your case. And if it doesn't, then just don't include that in your narrative. But it is a really interesting resource that I think, whether you're doing economic development grant or not, this could come in handy. Now, for those of you that are wanting to talk about environmental justice and tie these sort of elements into your project, which I think is smart, let's go have a look again at Spokane. So I just typed that up into the search engine. Here we are. I think I'll zoom in just a smidge. So you're going to go ahead and click on Add Maps. Click on the EJ screen map. You'll see how I did that, EJ screen map. Come back. And then not all of these actually provide a lot of information, but for instance, we could start with the demographic indicators, like, okay, where's the minority population? So we can see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on demographic indicators, and you can go through all of these depending on what your project is based on, but I'm going to go ahead and just click low income population. I've already added that to the map, and now I can see, okay, what parts of Spokane are in the upper percentiles of low income, and perhaps your project or the beneficiaries that you serve, perhaps they are downtown, right? And this is downtown, that's showing a high low-income population in the surrounding neighborhoods. So if this is where your project's located and your beneficiaries are in this area, this gives you some really good data to include in your narrative. So you can obviously go through all of these and see what helps strengthen your case. As it relates to environmental justice, this is basically looks at a whole bunch of factors that do affect whether you get to be as healthy as you would be if you lived in a different neighborhood, or have the same economic opportunity, etc. So it's a really valuable and powerful data point to use. So let's go ahead and look at like diesel particulate. I'm going to add that to the map. So it's showing that this area, which having lived in Spokane, is historically industrial. So it's showing us where it falls on the air quality, essentially, with how much diesel particulate is in the air there. So if you're trying to make the case in our quality case, and that there's lots of people actually living in this area now, that would be a good spot. Let's have a look, for instance, at Superfund proximity. So this is interesting. So you can see this is a Superfund site. I think this is related to an old smelter plant for aluminum. So large Superfund site. But again, depending on where your project's located, maybe that's a data point that you can use. So you're going to have to kind of go through this based on your own project, but what you're looking for is just that little nugget that adds a sentence or two to really paint your case of why your project is needed, it's urgent, why there's just a lot of, environmental justice or economic justice that needs to be addressed for this area to be as healthy and vibrant as other parts of your community. So just wanted to share that. I thought they're helpful tools. We use these depending on what grants we're working on, and thought you might as well. If you have other resources you like to use, please drop those into the comment section below. We'd love to crowdsource that information. We can do some other videos on them and ask any questions you might have, etc. We do go into more detail on these things in our course, Grant Writing from Start to Funded, which you can check out a free mini course in the description box below. That's it. Thank you so much for your time. Have an awesome day. Catch you later.